I'm Hillary Hendershot, your host, and this is The Retirement Years on Profit Boss Radio, episode 143. The Retirement Years on Profit Boss Radio is your weekly wealth building and retirement mastermind. Profit Boss is also a movement for women who want to reach their full wealth potential and be financially free. Let me be your guide as you defy the odds, take control of your money, grow your wealth, and retire well. Do you want the secrets of wealth and retirement to be yours? This is the place. I'm Hillary Hendershot. I'm a certified financial planner running a leading advisory firm for women and couples, and I'm sharing with you real stories from real life and real people who are making it happen. Forget Wall Street. You ready? Let's do this. You know, the idea of planning for retirement alone can be daunting, let alone bringing up the conversation with your financial partner. Maybe you just consider that person to be your life partner, your romance partner, your travel partner, and here you are stuck having to have this conversation about money. I get it. You may not even know where to start, and you've got lots of financial obligations today to fulfill on. You have to worry about buying a house and then furnishing it and replacing the roof every 10 to 15 years. You have to worry about sending the kids to college and whether or not to help them with things like healthcare, a wedding, buying a house, and maybe graduate school. You have to worry about strategizing your career and whether or not to take big, luxurious vacations now or to continue to penny pinch and, so you can afford more later. And all the while, this massive financial goal is looming. So it's a little bit like you're building the jet while you're flying it. So it's hard work. Go easy on yourself. It really is a lot to accomplish. But for those of you who do put in the time and effort, you really can set yourself up for a phase of your life that can be quite sublime. If you avoid financial stress, and of course, other stressors, life can be really enjoyable, really relaxing, really peaceful at times. Everybody handles retirement differently, but I've read that one of the biggest regrets people report on their deathbed is not having allowed themselves to be happier. Really is a choice, right? And that's what we're together on Profit Boss Radio about, is having you live your best life in retirement. Many of you can have the travel you want, the adventure you want, the relaxation you want. I meet couples who consider their retirement their second honeymoon, and it's so cute. It's adorable. Retirement can be a period where you choose to engage in projects because you enjoy them, paid or not, like my father-in-law, who will probably never stop doing academic finance research papers or attending conferences, like my stepfather, who's in his 80s and is still a substitute teacher or a substitute principal at the San Jose High School, where he taught for nearly 40 years before he retired. Preparing for retirement can feel like a lot of sacrifice, like a lifetime of forgoing what you want today in order to plan for tomorrow, but it really doesn't have to. We've all met people who get up before dawn to go to the gym. Some of them spend all day martyring themselves about it, right? Complaining about how they got no sleep and how they're a zombie when they're out there exercising. But we also know people who get up at the same time and are enlivened by the fact that they have highly capable bodies and proud of their discipline to wake up so early and motivated by the fact that they're in great shape. And you can make it really great. You really can. So also in the vein of going easy on yourself, planning for retirement per se is relatively new to the human lexicon and set of financial needs. In fact, according to Wikipedia, human beings have been on Earth for about 200,000 years. I looked this up. Back then, life was probably short and relatively brutal. No one was thinking about saving for the future. In fact, money hadn't even been invented. It was only around 1884 that in Australia, life expectancy rose to over 45 years. I thought that was really interesting. Like, why Australia, right? By the turn of the 20th century in the US, life expectancy finally surpassed 55 years. And in 1935, when the Social Security Act was passed, guaranteeing retirement pensions to Americans over the age of 65, life expectancy was 61.7 years. It's true. I think this is so funny. Social Security was never meant to provide for your retirement. We had no concept that human beings would live so long. And if you've checked the numbers recently, you know that Social Security won't, in fact, provide for a very lucrative retirement even now. Even though Social Security recipients got a 2.8% raise in 2019, that amounts to just $39 a month for most people, and it takes the average monthly payout from $1,422 in 2018 to just $1,461 in 2019. I certainly don't want to count on $1,400 a month in today's dollars for retirement. I don't know about you. Longevity is a wonderful thing. It's a sign of progress. We get to be around on the planet longer. We get to enjoy more time with friends and family and increase the size of our carbon footprint and do more great work. But it's also a bit of a problem because we have to pay for our lives. So how do you do that? How do you plan for your future together with your significant other? So I've divided this episode into 3 sections. First, what you need to know about how to start planning together. This first section is for those of you who maybe haven't come to the table with your partner or spouse. I'll give you ways to think about why you might want to do that, what questions you might want to ask your partner to encourage the retirement planning conversation, which honestly can be really intimidating for some people, regardless of gender. Second section is, assuming you're both now focused on saving, strategizing, planning, and investing, what are the things you need to be focused on and why? So this section will be full of useful tips for planning together and things to be thinking about. And finally, the most important aspects of your financial life. In this third section, we'll talk about some of the technical considerations you need to know in order to have a successful retirement, like how to plan for Social Security, how to think about what you need to save to pay for healthcare, the truth about income taxes and being retired through potentially 15 presidencies, and of course, a little bit about investing. Those are really the major aspects of your retirement life. And so this conversation would be incomplete without covering them. Now, if you're listening to this and you want to jump to one of those sections, or maybe you've jumped forward and you want to jump back, we will put the time markers in the show notes in your podcast player. So it's in the show notes on my website at hillaryhendershot.com/143. But also if you're on the road right now or on the train commuting to work, just click on details in the episode area of your podcast player and you'll be able to see the time markers, so you can skip between sections if you want. But of course, I encourage you to just listen straight through. So here we go with part 1. Let's talk about how to start planning together. This really is about thinking about how to honor and maximize the financial partnership that you're in. So I get to talk to a lot of couples considering retirement together. And while many have been talking and planning jointly for many years, I would say about 20 to 25% have decided to keep things separate completely or to some degree. So now that you're approaching retirement age, most couples who have kept things separate are left wondering, is this the right way to do it? What's he thinking about his money? And what am I thinking about money? And how do we navigate life after we stop working? In my experience, even if you both have nest eggs that you've been squirreling away for years, it actually really is helpful if both partners can come to the table and plan jointly. I mean, if you think about it, you do have quite a number of shared expenses. And there's the house, the food, the kids, the vacations. And while continuing to view it as my money versus your money can definitely avoid some bad feelings and tough calls in the short term, in my experience, pooling your funds and beginning to really make joint decisions leads to the experience of solidarity, partnership, having someone you know you can rely on, and really being able to make those joint decisions about your future that you are planning together. And just so we're clear, what I mean by pooling your money is not like you putting your IRA in the same account as your partner's IRA, because you actually can't do that. You can save in the same brokerage account, but for the most part, my clients simply think about their money as coming from the joint resource and going to the life, the joint needs. What's mine is yours. We look at the accounts together on the same reports and we sum the balances to be considered your family nest egg. So if your IRA is $500,000 and their IRA is $500,000 and you have $1 million in a brokerage account, your retirement nest egg is $2 million. You can keep your accounts at different banks or financial institutions, although most ultimately decide to keep them in the same place. One point of fact that you might know, and if you don't, it might sway your thinking a bit, is that if you're married, especially if you're in a community property state, all income earned by both spouses is joint income. The community property states in the U.S. are Louisiana, Arizona, California, Texas, Washington, Idaho, Nevada, New Mexico, and Wisconsin. If you live in a different state and you want to look up the rules in that state, I'll include a link in the show notes. So in those community property states, no matter how much more than one spouse, another spouse earns, all of the income is actually split 50-50 in the eyes of the law. I know it's never really fun to be reminded of the long arm of the law, but there it is. Also, if you're struggling to come together to plan, just remember that a way to think about how and where you spend your resources is that money flows to your values and commitments. So obviously you value and are committed to one another, and there are definitely ways in which you can split expenses and grow your nest egg, and this can get a little complicated over time. So I'll give you an example of a couple I know. They've been together for 40 some odd years and they've always kept their finances separate. So they literally paid for everything separately, and now he's got a chronic and debilitating disease. It's really sad. He's a great guy and they've never talked about how they want to leave their assets. It's just not a conversation that they're comfortable entering into, and they do have children together, and he's got accounts in his name alone. And she doesn't really know where they are, how to access them. She doesn't know if she's the beneficiary of them. And not knowing is really creating a lot of anxiety for her and a significant inability to plan. And at this point, his mental health is impacted by his disease. So as you can imagine, the whole thing has just gotten massively more complicated. Ultimately, if life goes the way it's supposed to, and as it has for this couple, you're going to slow down. You won't have perfect health your whole life. Things will start to decline medically, if you know what I'm talking about. One of you might need the other to take care of you, or maybe you'll take turns caring for one another over the decades. And if things haven't been shared or talked about during the good years, that's going to make for some potentially really negative feelings during the not so good ones. And not just bad feelings that we're trying to protect you from here, right? But this is very real things that can get in your way. Maybe there are resources you won't be able to access, things you won't be able to pay for, opportunities you'll lose out on. So while starting to plan for retirement together might force you to have those awkward conversations, I do believe it's the best thing for you long term. I really hope that helps and inspires you to move toward planning together. So I thought of some ways that you could start the conversation, kind of a list of prompts or opportunities for you to take action. Okay, so here's my list of questions and ways to kind of broach the conversation if this is your first time, or hopefully your first successful time broaching the conversation with your partner. First, maybe you start by forwarding this episode of the retirement years on Profit Boss Radio to your partner. That would be a really nice way to kick off the conversation, wouldn't it? Tonight, maybe at dinner, you just ask, so where do you see yourself in 10 years? Maybe you start that conversation, or maybe based on your age, it's 20 years. How about, I've been thinking about my 401k investments, and I realize that I've been saving, but I'm not really clear what my returns are or whether I've got an appropriate investment selection in there. Are you comfortable with how much you've managed to save? Do you think we should join forces at some point soon? Ask your partner and probably be prepared to offer up your own thinking on any of the following questions. What do you look forward to in retirement, honey? Is there anything specific that you're thinking needs to be involved in your own retirement? Like some idea you have that it's going to be filled with fishing or knitting or traveling, or do we need to live next door to your mother? The mother-in-law. So other questions. Do you know where you want to live, honey? Another version of this, and like the subtext of this question is, can we afford to stay in the house we're in now? Should we think about buying down? Or maybe the house is too big and you just don't like all the maintenance. I mean, you're paying that housekeeper and you have to walk up those stairs every day. Maybe you'd like a smaller one-story house. If you live in a high cost of living area now, because that's where the work is, do you want to buy a house there with the expectation of buying down in the future? That's a viable strategy. Some of my clients have homes with $2 million that they can expect to sell when they want to retire. Of course, this assumes you haven't used your home like an ATM by taking out more and more cash by refinancing, right? You can only spend equity. I know you know that. Okay, other questions. Do you think we've been saving enough? Should we make sure? Do either of us expect an inheritance in the future? Conversely, are there people that we know and care about that we might think about being financially responsible for? Maybe your friend just hasn't been financially lucky or has suffered some, bad outcome and you want to help her out in the future. I definitely have clients who have ongoing expenses for friends, for parents, for siblings, and if you have the ability to help somebody who's in a tough life situation and you want to do that, you can budget for it. I'm going to let you in on something that most couples who come visit me don't really know though. I hope it's going to make some of this much easier on you. The truth is, even though I just gave you a list of questions to open up the conversation, most people don't know the answers to these questions. More importantly, people who have wildly successful retirements don't know the answers to those questions sometimes. So truly, don't get frustrated with yourself or your partner if one or both of you can't answer them. After all, life happens. If someone had asked you at age 25 to promise what you'd be doing at age 35, you probably couldn't have done it. Making commitments and having certainty about retirement can be the same way. It's really hard to predict the future, especially when you're engaged on a daily basis in work and taking care of the kids and managing life now. It's really difficult to put any anchors in the ground about what life is going to be like in the far off future. Not only that, but life happens. There's another saying, stuff happens, ish happens. You get what I'm saying? You never know what's going to come up or what situations are going to change that necessitate different life choices. The most important thing is that you set yourself up to be able to make choices. And when it comes down to it, that means money and health. I wouldn't be shocked if a couple came into my office and didn't know the answers to the questions I just proposed to you. It doesn't mean that they're ill-prepared. What I do look for, however, and what I help people plan for is to make sure that they're saving enough and do what they can to be responsible for their own health. Eat your fruits and vegetables. Exercise 3 to 4 hours a week. Save 20 to 25%, right? I've got something new for you in today's episode. We're calling it the Moneywise segment, where we give you a little bit of wisdom designed to make you smarter than your neighbor. The topic for today's Moneywise segment is the law of diminishing marginal utility. That's a lot of words, sorry. This is what explains why it's easier to save money as we get older because our income goes up. Utility is what economists call value or happiness, the stuff that we like. It's how much we like or enjoy something, and marginal utility is the enjoyment or benefit gained from consuming one additional unit of a good or service. So of course it's intuitive to you that your marginal utility or enjoyment from the first taco on Taco Tuesday is a lot higher than the marginal utility from your sixth taco. That's because of diminishing marginal utility. As you get more of something, the enjoyment you get from the next unit of it decreases. So when you first start working, it's hard to save because you have a low income and you want to spend what you're earning. For the same reason, $100 is worth a lot more to a poor person than a wealthy person. Also, if you've never been to Paris, a trip to the capital of France might be a bucket list item. But if you've been 100 times or you were born there, it might be just routine. It is one of the justifications for a progressive income tax system where higher amounts of income are taxed at a higher rate. Also, there's the water-diamond paradox. Water is essential for our survival, but because it's abundant, it doesn't have much dollar value. Contrast that with diamonds, which do nothing to help us survive, and the De Beers Corporation controlled the supply of for many years. Because they are scarce, we value them greatly, with little to no biological justification. And that is diminishing marginal utility. Hey, Profit Boss. If after listening to today's episode, you think you might be ready to take meaningful actions with your wealth and perhaps consider working with me and my firm in some way, then I'd love to hear from you. Just go to hillaryhendershot.com/hello. That's Hillary with one L and Hendershot with two T's.com/hello. When I'm not sitting behind the mic, I'm running Hendershot Wealth Management. We're a fee-only fiduciary financial advisory firm. We work with women and couples to take their finances to the next level. Everything I talk about here on the show gets personalized and put to work for my clients. So I ask you, why wait till tomorrow when you can start realizing your full wealth potential today? The life you want to live, it doesn't have to wait. Just imagine the freedom and joy you'll experience when you've secured your retirement and enjoyed the years leading up to it. That's what I want for you. That's what I do for my clients. And if that's what you want for yourself, just head on over to my website right now, hillaryhendershot.com/hello. All of our initial conversations are totally complimentary. So let's just see where a friendly conversation may lead. hillaryhendershot.com/hello. Okay, section 2. The things you need to do to plan as a couple. So what things should you be thinking about? What are my top tips for planning for retirement together? Now that you've agreed you're planning together, what are the things you need to be thinking about? All the things I'm going to mention today get integrated into the financial plan, so they're really important things for you to either pay attention to or be on the same page about. First, definitely you need to get specific about some of the big decisions. I would say this is within 10 years of retirement. You do need to be getting specific about some things. Too many people stay vague about aspects of their financial future, and it makes planning very difficult. If you can't decide, I'd say just plan to keep doing what you're doing now. Stay in the same house, drive the same cars, spend the same amount of money you've been spending now. Once you've made some specific goals that have numbers attached to them, then we can start planning to achieve them. If your goals change, we just tweak the plan. Here are some things we do need concrete answers about. Okay, are we going to stay in the same house or are we going to move? If we have college left to pay for the kids, how much in dollars are we willing to budget for that? Are we going to continue, increase, or decrease our leisure activities? Are we going to be donating to charities or churches in retirement? And if so, to what financial level? If the plan would be improved by doing it, are we willing and able to work part-time during retirement to supplement spending? Think about the things that you value, the people, the possibilities, the organizations that you think are doing great work on the planet. These aspects of your life all impact your retirement plans, so you should be aware of them. Remember, as we create your plan, it's about you. We're going to honor who you are as we plan for your financial future. This may seem obvious to you, or it may not. I don't know, but your retirement plan should be customized to you. And those customizations, those things that make up you, that make you you, it starts with your core, with your humanity, with your principles and values, with the things that you choose to do with your time and money and resources. So even though this conversation can seem very technical, it's actually quite personal. More questions to get specific about. Do we want to budget for a big purchase in retirement, like an RV? Are we wanting to contribute to the kids' wedding plans? If so, how much? Are there specific places we know we want to travel? If not, that's okay. But if you know you want an African safari, let's put it in the plan. How often do we find ourselves purchasing new or new/used vehicles? What price tag are we comfortable with for those vehicles? You want to sort of dot those expenses across your cash flow plan for your retirement. Let's talk about XPadding. So one thing I hear people talking about a lot is moving out of the US, either permanently or for a short time. Europe is the most common destination people long for, but there are other ones that are far more affordable and so can actually enable a more lucrative retirement than you could afford in the US. So I decided to include some current research on XPadding in this episode. If that doesn't apply to you, just fast forward past this section of the episode about 2 minutes and we'll get back to the purely US-based stuff. And even if XPadding isn't something you consider, maybe it's just interesting to listen to. So according to internationalliving.com, the best foreign countries for Americans to consider retiring to include Malaysia, Thailand, Peru, Costa Rica, Mexico, and Ecuador. I'm not an expert, but you have to do your own research here, and I definitely recommend a test period. Don't just pack up everything and move. Rent for 12 to 18 months before you do anything permanent. I mean, if it were me, I would do several reconnaissance trips. I would want to I would want to go out and visit communities of other American expats where they were living and check things out and see if I was socially compatible with them and just check it out. Spend some time there and see if that's what I want to do with my decade or something, 2 decades maybe of my life. Then if you're going to move to a different country permanently, you definitely have to consider what to do with your money. So if the currency there isn't pegged to the US dollar, you could seriously consider converting all of your nest egg to the local currency. Then you won't suffer changes in currency exchange rates. The reason, if you did keep your dollars in the US and live in a different country, you would very much be at risk to swings in currency exchange. So if the price of the US dollar shoots up relative to the local currency for years at a time, then you could have lost half your purchasing power and therefore any hope of continuing on in your happy retirement. So you need to plan for that. You would also want to explore what sort of investment options are available in that country before you convert. Can you get access to a strategically built low-cost investment portfolio? We'll talk more about investments later in this episode. Do you want to work with a financial advisor there who specializes in working with expats like you? What's the central banking system like? How stable is the government? There are lots of things to consider. And if you write in with questions about this, I'll explore this topic more fully in a future episode, but I'm just kind of testing the waters because it is something I hear people talking about a lot. Also, obviously, do your due diligence and figure out what kind of quality of healthcare is available there before your move. Nothing would be worse than having some health event and not being able to get access to a good doctor or, frankly, be visited by the people who love you, right? Okay, next tip to be thinking about together is definitely talk about your beneficiaries and check your beneficiary elections. I talked about this in the last episode of Profit Boss Radio, but it's been a few months and it's definitely worth revisiting. When you met your partner, you had a particular plan with your assets. Maybe your sister was your beneficiary and you've never updated that, and now you want it to be your spouse or your estate or your adult children. Please, 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 please talk through how you want things to go after you die. Next planning point to consider together, let me address this question of whether you two should retire at the same time. I think there's a lot of controversy about this. To be honest with you, some of it is a little concocted. I think planning for retirement was mostly treated as a very technical activity by the industry and by the media until about 10 years ago. And then people started to figure out that the people retiring were actually human beings. And sometimes people would be financially successful in retirement, but not emotionally successful. The divorce rate in retirement increased. So now you have lots of people who publish about and talk about how to stay happy in retirement. And that's just one thing we're going to be talking a lot about here on Profit Boss Radio in coming episodes. But just like anything, there are people doing really great work on it. And there are people doing work that I consider to be a little shallow. It's not super helpful to many, kind of just treating the surface, right? So yes, we're going to talk about living with purpose and choosing happiness and creating fulfilling experiences. And ultimately, human happiness is elusive, but it doesn't change character after you retire. So the ways to be happy after you retire are going to be very similar to the ways to be happy before you retire. When it comes to the decision of when each individual member of a couple should retire, first of all, for many of you, it just won't be that simple. Okay, you're winding down a business, or you got laid off 3 years before you thought you'd retire, or you'd have a health event that causes you to need to work from home or part-time. For most, it's more of a phasing out of the workforce, and you may not even have an exact date that you retire. You may not strategize it, right? It may just happen. It's like, oh, 3 months later, I don't have another contract and I'm not working part-time anymore. I guess I'm retired. So don't stress out about it. And honestly, I don't think it makes that big of a difference. There are some people that would have you think that retiring at the same time as your spouse leads you to feeling irritated by their presence, left to reinvent yourself, but not given enough space to do it. Well, I'll be honest. I've worked with hundreds of clients through that transition to retirement, and I've really never had any clients complain to me. I've never had a married couple come to me or one member of the couple come to me and say, wow, we really timed this wrong, right? I feel so cooped up and encumbered by my husband's presence or my wife's presence. It hasn't happened. And I have read about it a little, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. And frankly, if it's going to be a big deal for you as a couple, you probably know that. So there you go. Okay, this leads me to, in my opinion, one of the most valuable tips for couples planning together, and that is, please consider finding a fee-only fiduciary advisor that you trust. At this point, I'm sure I don't have to reiterate for you that financial planning is very complex. Lots of mistakes can be made. We haven't even talked about the math that goes into retirement planning and the impact of some of these other aspects of life, the impact those can have on your nest egg. What if mom gets sick and your sibs won't or can't pay like you thought they would? What about changes in the economy, the stock market, or the regulatory environment? Since I've been a financial planner, the estate tax exclusion alone has gone from $650,000 to $5.49 million. Tax rates have changed too, so you need to be able to adjust your plans to the outside environment. One of the most important things a good financial advisor can do for you is help you not make emotional decisions with your money. It never fails. Whenever the market goes up or down quickly, I field a handful of questions and concerns from clients. Is my portfolio allocation right? Should we sell? Should I have more cash? Should I be worried about the president? I help answer those questions and I keep clients on track, and that's really critical. So please consider working with a good, comprehensive, fee-only financial advisor. My next and final tip for you planning for retirement together is to maximize your expected Social Security income. This gets a little technical, so the tip itself bridges sections 2 and 3 of this episode. Remember that section 2 is things to think about and plan for, and in section 3, we're talking about the kind of the pillars of retirement, and they're the more technical aspects of financial planning. So, maximize Social Security income. Social Security is a huge cash flow asset for most retirees. It is not likely to go away, so maximize what you get. I've got clients earning more than $60,000 a year in retirement benefits that do not go away. That's like having almost $2 million in an investment portfolio. It's amazing. Don't underestimate Social Security's value to you. So, tips to maximize your income. 1, work for at least 35 years. Social Security benefits are based on the 35 years you worked and earned the most. If you don't work, zeros are factored into the calculation, which decreases your benefits. 2, work until your full retirement age. That's 66 if you were born before 1960 and 67 if you were born after 1960. You can delay benefits to increase them too, but that means you have to forego thousands of dollars in those interim years when you're not earning. So the answer to whether or not you should delay really is a function of your own longevity. Tricky, I know. Third tip, earn as much money as you can. Earnings of up to $132,900 in 2019 are used to calculate retirement payments, so that's a milestone to get to. This applies to self-employed business owners as well. Don't force losses on your business so that you don't have to pay tax. You really need to pay yourself, and you need to pay into the Social Security system, and in order to do that, you have to pay income taxes. There's just no way around that. Okay, I'm now going to transition to a slightly more technical conversation about Social Security. So this is the first topic in the third section of this episode. You and your spouse's Social Security benefits are based on your Social Security earnings, which the government has been compiling on your behalf for your entire working history. Your total Social Security benefit will be calculated in the year you claim Social Security, and that benefit can change over time. And most of you know that the government is now rewarding people for waiting longer to claim. The spouse with the higher earnings history will have a higher estimated benefit. I'm including a link to the Social Security benefits estimator tool in the show notes for today's episode. You do need to realize that representatives of the Social Security Administration are known for giving people wrong advice about how to claim their benefit. I don't know what to say about this except, hey, they're government employees. If you think about it, it's not in the government's best interest to spend its resources trying to educate you or its employees about how to maximize Social Security income, if you see what I'm saying. So I don't know if we blame this big flaw on ignorance or maliciousness, but nevertheless, you need to plan around it. Even though you might take action based on a Social Security Administration employee's advice and make a mistake, the administration is not going to take responsibility for that mistake, so it could end up costing you tens of thousands of dollars. Basically, this is how Social Security benefits are earned. When you're working, you can earn up to 4 credits per year. As soon as you have 40 credits, so you've been working and paying into the system for 10 years, then you're eligible for benefits. In 2019, there's a minimum. You have to earn at least $1,360 to get 1 credit and $5,440 to get the maximum 4 credits for the year. Though that's not very much earnings, but there are floors, okay? So obviously, during your lifetime, you'll probably earn more credits than the minimum number you need to be eligible for benefits. All that extra work doesn't increase your benefit amount, though. The average of your earnings over your working years, not the number of credits you earn, determines how much your monthly payment will be. So the more dollars you earn in one year, over years, average earnings, the more Social Security benefit you get later. Some limitations on this: even if you work more than 35 years, the administration will only calculate earnings from your top 35 years. So it's between 10 and 35 years to earn a benefit. Also, if you earn $1 million a year, as I kind of intimated earlier, the most credit the administration will give you in 2019 is for having earned $132,900. The good side of that is that you don't pay Social Security tax on earnings above $132,900. And the downside is that your Social Security income doesn't just keep increasing as you earn more. So there's a maximum benefit. So let's say it's time to start talking about how and when to claim your Social Security income, because you can't usually undo or reverse your Social Security claim. It's a big decision. For couples where one spouse earned a lot of money and the other earned very little, you might consider claiming your spousal benefit instead of your own. If you've been married to a high earner for at least 10 years, you can claim half that person's Social Security benefit for yourself, but the higher earning spouse has to have claimed his or her own benefit in order for you to claim your spousal benefit. Also, it really matters when you claim. As I mentioned before, the government is now rewarding people for claiming later. We're getting a little technical here, and I tend to lose people when I talk about Social Security, but I hope that $2 million number I mentioned earlier got you interested. It's real money, and it's important you maximize what it can mean in your lifetime. So that's the first retirement pillar that you need to be planning for. Next is healthcare. To plan for retirement together, you're going to want to think about paying for your own healthcare. The outcomes here can vary so widely that I really can only do a topical treatment of it in this episode. Right now, the current best thinking is that each individual should plan to save about an extra $250,000 to pay for healthcare in retirement. If you happen to be someone who ends up needing long periods with healthcare assistance, like people talk about assisted living, that number can go way up. If you die early, it will have been an unnecessary expense. It's really not an easy question to answer, and we'll be talking about it more on this podcast because it's a critical piece of your financial life. The best ways to minimize your healthcare costs, assuming you don't have a hereditary condition or become the victim of an accident or something, are to take care of yourself. Eat right, exercise, see your doctor, do the preventative visits, don't smoke, and don't drink too much. When they tell you to come in, right? Have a relationship with your GP. Get to know that person. I don't mean have a personal relationship. I mean, most people don't go to the doctor until it's too late. And so there are things that don't get diagnosed, and it's a problem. So go to the doctor. Next retirement pillar is income tax. Basically, here's what I want to say to you. During your retirement, if you retire at the age of 60 and die at the age of 90, you'll go through 30 years living on your retirement nest egg. There are lots of people who think that government spending is going up right now. And so what can tax rates do? Well, they can only go up. Well, I would like to point out to you that people have been saying that for years. And as a result, they've been stuffing money into Roth IRAs and basically spending a lot of money in tax obligation, converting to Roth IRAs. And I make recommendations to convert to Roth IRAs all the time, but Roth IRAs are good when your tax rates are higher in retirement. Everyone thinks tax rates are going up. And what happened in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act? The tax rates actually went down. And yet by limiting the amount of state and local taxes that people can deduct, what the government actually accomplished was increasing people's taxes while lowering their tax rates. So I encourage you to consider that we have no idea what's going to happen with income tax rates. I think that you should have as much money in tax deferred accounts as you can. When you pull money out of those accounts, you pay ordinary income tax on those distributions. And you should also have, hopefully, an equal amount in tax-free accounts like Roth IRAs, okay? I would love it if you sailed into retirement with half of your savings in an IRA and the other half in a Roth IRA. That said, what happens for most people is in any given year, if you have high income, you max out your ability to contribute to the retirement account, and then you're saving in a brokerage account. So then you're paying capital gains on it. And then we get into a situation where it's about tax minimization, but that's an individual by individual conversation. So my core message to you on the topic of income taxes is do the right thing every year by maximizing your tax deferred savings. Get yourself connected with a good tax planner and a good financial advisor so you can minimize your income tax obligation over time. And then just be prepared for different tax environments. So you have to diversify where your money is. The last financial planning pillar is, of course, investing. I really can't overstate the impact of your choices early on in this aspect of your financial life. Differences in allocation and not making mistakes in terms of where to invest your money can make a massive, massive difference in your nest egg. And I've talked a lot about investing on this podcast. We'll talk more about it over this season, of course. I'm sure I'll do dedicated episodes on it. I think some of the things that are happening in the bull market right now are super fascinating, so I'm sure that I will talk about them. But essentially, two things. First of all, there's just a massive amount of evidence out there about how we should be investing now. If you're guessing or putting together your own portfolio, you're just making a mistake that's going to cost you money over time. That's almost assured, okay? And then second, if you're afraid of the cost of hiring a good financial advisor, well, let me just make the point to you that there are two types of errors in the world. There are errors of omission and errors of commission. So if paying a financial advisor 1% of the account balance per year feels like an error of commission, well, making the mistake of having a bad or expensive investment portfolio that's poorly constructed is definitely an error of omission. And, at this point, we've been in a 9-year bull market, and I have people coming into my office. And when I see someone with that $400,000 in cash, I have to bite my tongue, because what I don't want to say to them is, you have cost yourself $150,000, $200,000 in investment returns by not making that decision, by not having an investment policy statement, by not having a professional who manages your accounts for you. You're definitely making very expensive errors of omission. It's very hard for me not to say that to people. I feel kind of devastated for them. But of course, me saying that to them isn't going to fix the problem. The most important thing is to get going on an investment plan that works for you. So that's all I'm going to say about investing this time. But I hope this episode has been helpful for you. We'd love to hear your win stories. Reach out in the contact form in the show notes for today's episode at hillaryhendershot.com/143. So back in the 80s or 90s, when I was a teenager, we had pagers. So we had pager codes. 143 is 1 letter, 4 letters, 3 letters, and it means I love you. So I think that the fact that today's episode is called How to Plan for Retirement Together is very sweet, because, of course, what's a better way to say I love you than let's plan for financial freedom together. Have a great day, and we will catch you next time on Profit Boss Radio. As we wrap things up here for today, I need to review with you the things I have to disclose as a fiduciary financial advisor offering wealth management services through my firm, Hendershot Wealth Management, LLC. You should know that the opinions I express on Profit Boss Radio are my own, and they can change. The content I provide in the show is for general education. It's not intended as specific investment advice, nor do I recommend any specific financial products. Unlike how I roll at home with my husband, I can't guarantee that my statements, opinions, or forecasts are always 100% right. Of course, I wish I could peek into that proverbial crystal ball, but so far, I haven't found it. Past performance is not indicative of future results. I talk a lot about indexes, and I want you to know you can't actually buy an index because, of course, when you take a list of companies and create a product that allows people to invest in those companies, there are fees and expenses involved that reduce returns. Remember, all investing involves risk, which, as you know, means you could lose your money. And I have to tell you that there is no guarantee that any investment plan or strategy will be successful. And that should keep my lawyers happy. Have a great day.